Look, forget the spreadsheets, the charts, and all the typical mechanics of money for a second. Today, in this explainer, we're stepping into the shadows of human psychology. We're going to explore a tragic, honestly fascinating flaw in the human mind, and that is our relentless pursuit of limitless wealth. This is really a story about greed, ambition, and why some of the most successful people on the planet end up completely destroying their own lives.
Think about this quote for a moment. One of the most dangerous financial habits is believing that more will finally make you happy. We spend our entire lives chasing this invisible finish line, totally convinced that the next promotion, or maybe the next zero in our bank account, will be the thing that finally brings us peace. But what happens when you realize that finish line doesn't actually exist?
You see headlines about billionaires losing it all, and it's easy to wonder how it happens. Well, financial destruction isn't usually about a lack of intelligence. In fact, it rarely ever is. It's almost always about a complete lack of psychological control. When highly successful people do crazy things, it's not because they suddenly failed at math. It's because their relationship with money is driven by deep insecurity, unchecked ego, and a total inability to understand their own limits.
All right, let's get into part one, the disease of more.
Consider the sheer, unbelievable absurdity of unchecked wealth. Take the story of a brilliant technology executive. This is a guy who designed key Wi-Fi components in his 20s, wildly successful. But he carried this really toxic mix of deep insecurity and childish arrogance. One day, he actually hands a colleague thousands in cash, orders him to go buy solid gold coins, and then drives out to the Pacific Ocean. He and his friends literally proceeded to skip those gold coins into the sea, just for fun. Like skipping rocks. I mean, how long can a lifestyle like that actually last? Well, years later, that genius executive was completely broke.
It's the ultimate paradox of money, right? On one hand, you have Ronald Read, a rural janitor and gas station attendant who swept floors at JCPenney. When he passed away at 92, he left behind an $8 million fortune built entirely on quiet patience and frugality. Now, on the exact opposite side, you have Richard Fuscone, a Harvard-educated MBA, a brilliant Merrill Lynch executive. Yet this guy borrowed incredibly heavily to expand an 18,000-square-foot mega mansion. And when the financial crisis hit, he lost everything. The certified genius went bankrupt, while the janitor became a multimillionaire. Intelligence really didn't matter here. Behavior did.
Which brings us to part two, the moving goalpost. Let's say you're a rookie baseball player who just got called up to the major leagues. You're earning $500,000 a year. By literally any statistical definition, you are rich. You have officially made it. But you play on the same team as other major leaguers.
So you look across the locker room and you see a superstar like Mike Trout. Mike Trout signed a massive contract that pays him $36 million every single year. Suddenly, your $500,000 feels like pocket change. You feel broke. The goalpost just moved. But the illusion doesn't even stop there. Do you think Mike Trout feels like he's at the absolute top of the world?
Well, if Trout looks over at the world of Wall Street, he sees the top 10 highest-paid hedge fund managers. To even make that list a few years ago, you had to personally earn at least $340 million in a single year. And those managers, they're looking up at Warren Buffett, making billions. And Buffett is looking at Jeff Bezos, whose net worth can swing by tens of billions in a single year. The ceiling of social comparison is so insanely astronomically high that it is mathematically impossible to win. If you define your success by having more than the people around you, I guarantee you will spend your entire life feeling inadequate.
The absolute only way to survive this is to step off the treadmill. There's this great story about authors Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller at a billionaire hedge fund manager's party on Shelter Island. Vonnegut jokingly points out to Heller that their host made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his wildly successful novel, Catch-22, over its entire history. Heller just smiled and responded, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough." That right there, that is real power.
Moving on to part three, risking everything for nothing. Let's talk about the really tragic case of Rajat Gupta. Born an orphan in Calcutta, he literally rises to become the CEO of McKinsey. He's sitting on the board of Goldman Sachs, rubbing shoulders with billionaires and top philanthropists. He had unimaginable wealth, a net worth around $100 million. He had power, prestige, complete freedom. But he wasn't a billionaire. He desperately wanted to be in that elite billionaire circle, so he threw it all away. He engaged in insider trading, handing corporate secrets over to a hedge fund manager, and ended up sitting in a federal prison. He risked what he already had and what he actually needed for what he didn't have and, frankly, didn't need. It is a totally devastating consequence of unchecked greed.
Because look, there are things in this life that are absolutely invaluable, and they are never worth risking, no matter what the potential payout is. Your reputation, your freedom, your family and friends, your happiness. Constantly chasing more just puts these exact things on the roulette table. The only way to protect them is knowing exactly when it's time to walk away.
Let's shift gears to part 4, the illusion of wealth.
You see, getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different skill sets. Getting wealthy requires taking risks, being relentlessly optimistic, putting yourself out there. Staying wealthy requires the exact opposite. It demands humility, frugality, and a healthy dose of paranoia. Take Jesse Livermore, one of the greatest stock market traders of the 20th century. He made the modern equivalent of over $100 million. But that wealth, it made him feel invincible. He lost his edge, lost his paranoia, took on massive, reckless risk, lost everything, and tragically ended his own life. Survival, at the end of the day, is the ultimate financial skill.
To truly survive all this, we have to look inward and ask a really uncomfortable question. Why do we actually want wealth in the first place? This brings us to what's called the man-in-the-car paradox. When you see someone driving a $300,000 Ferrari down the street, you almost never look at the driver and think, wow, that guy is so cool. You look at the car and think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I am cool. We buy luxury to be admired and respected, but the bitter, dark irony is that people don't actually admire the person. They only admire the object, and they just use it as a benchmark for their own desires. And this completely shatters the illusion of those social media lifestyles we see every day. We constantly judge wealth by what we can see, the penthouses, the Rolexes, the first-class flights, but that is merely a display of current richness. True wealth is actually what you don't see. It's the luxury car that wasn't purchased, the diamonds not bought, the first-class upgrade you declined, because spending money just to show people how much money you have is literally the fastest way to have less money. True wealth is unspent assets. It's the buffer that gives you the ultimate currency, total freedom over your own time.
Finally, part 5, the power of enough. Let's really talk about this concept of enough. Highly driven, ambitious people often confuse enough with being lazy or leaving potential on the table, and they are fundamentally wrong. Having enough is realizing that an insatiable appetite will eventually, inevitably, push you to the point of regret. Think of it kind of like eating. The only way to truly know your physical limit is to eat until you are literally sick. Obviously, we don't do that because it hurts. Yet in finance, people push their risk and their ambition until they completely break. Enough isn't playing it safe, it's an offensive tactic. It is a critical skill necessary to protect your peace and guarantee your financial survival.
Because at the end of the day, earning money is just math. But protecting your mind, maintaining your sanity, and stepping away from the soul-crushing game of comparison, that takes true wisdom. The hardest financial skill is knowing when you already have enough. So ask yourself, are you playing a game you can actually win, or are you just going to keep moving the goalpost until you lose it all?